Hey, everybody. This is an update on my ongoing attempts to find somebody who is actively promoting Alisa Childers' thesis among the conservative evangelical apologetics community, of which there are so many, to find one of them, one of those individuals who is willing to sit down with me and discuss it and or debate it. So today I saw this tweet from Dry Apologist and I couldn't help but reply. His question was this: what topics are apologists most afraid to address? The more specific, the better. So I replied, given that I've been unable to get a single apologist who promotes Alisa Childers' claim that progressive Christianity is another religion, people such as Sean McDowell, Mike Winger, Mama Bear Apologetics, Frank Turek, Childers herself, to agree to debate or even discuss it, I'll say that. I've been trying since the end of April, 3 months now, to find one of these individuals who is actively promoting Childers' another gospel thesis about progressive Christianity. I've been trying to find one of them, one of these individuals who would have, frankly, I think, the courage of conviction to sit down with somebody like me who can articulate their position, my own position, and an understanding of what progressive Christianity is, and show the fundamental deep flaws in Alisa Childers' thesis and throughout her book. I'm looking with one person who's willing to do that. So I said, fair game. If nobody's willing to, I say, yeah, they're fearful of that. They don't want to defend it. Then I got a response from one of the ladies who works at Mama Bear Apologetics. Her name is Hillary Morgan Ferrer. Pardon me if the pronunciation of the last name is wrong. I don't know her. She replied, "You are confusing fear with pointlessness. From a majority of progressive teachings, it is another gospel. But since PCs eschew nailing down their position as a group with an authoritative text or specific statement of faith, it's just a moving target." First of all, I just find this to be a fundamentally perplexing response. The fact that you don't like the idea that you're not going to talk to people just because they have an identifier, and not everybody who has that identifier agrees on how to understand it or how it applies. To respond to that by saying, I'm not going to talk to any of you, I don't want to hear from you, it just seems to me to be a very odd thing for someone who purports to be an apologist to say. I think the only time that you should be shutting down conversations is when people are verbally and or otherwise abusive, harassing, threatening. But if somebody says in goodwill, I disagree with you on something important, I'd like to have a conversation with you about it, to reply, I don't want to hear from you or talk to you, I'm not interested in what you have to say, because you are from a group where there is a diversity of perspectives under the label of that group, to my mind, it doesn't make any sense. Indeed, if one consistently applied this, well, you'd apply to atheists. Atheists don't all agree to a specific statement of belief. Does that mean you shouldn't talk to individual atheists? And if you, for example, as I critiqued in my book, Is the Atheist My Neighbor? If you go around saying that atheists are in active rebellion against God, every one of them, and one of those atheists says, I think what you're saying is false and harmful, I'd like to talk to you about that, should you respond by saying, I don't want to talk to you because atheists don't all have the same beliefs? What if that person says, fair enough, the word atheist is used in a diversity of ways, but I still think the way you're using it is false and harmful, and you're making false and hurtful claims about a very large and diverse group of people. Well, I think that's exactly what's happening here when people like Ferrer are promoting this another gospel thesis, and then are not willing to talk to people who believe it is false and harmful. Now, the interesting thing as well, to double the irony here, is that the word evangelical is the same. There is no specific statement of faith that unifies all self-identifying evangelical Christians. There just isn't any. There are many statements. The North American evangelical, the NAE statement is one. There are others. People subscribe to different creeds and statements of belief, but there's no unifying single statement. Does that mean that other Christians should not talk to evangelicals because they do not all agree on one statement that unifies them all as a group? That, again, just doesn't make any sense. And one last thing here, I didn't ask to debate progressive Christianity as such. I said, I want to debate the thesis of another gospel, this book promoted by Alisa Childers and her thesis that you're defending, that progressive Christianity all constitutes another religion. See, the irony is, if there is no unifying statement of belief or practice that unifies all progressive Christians, then how can you go about saying it's another gospel in the first place? How can you go about saying it's another religion if there is no unifying set of beliefs that which all progressive Christians accept? See, ironically, Ferrer is here undermining the Childers thesis itself by acknowledging the enormous diversity that goes under the label of progressive Christian. And in fact, that's the point. You're spreading false and harmful claims about very large, diverse groups of people, and you ought to stop. Let's continue. So I replied, thanks for replying. I would like to formally invite you onto my YouTube channel to discuss your assertion that progressive Christianity is another gospel. You're welcome to present your case, and I'll offer a critique. Just to back up, look again, she said here, she claims from a majority of progressive teachings, it is another gospel. That is an evidential claim. I'd like to discuss that claim. I believe it's false, and I'd like to hear more about it and what evidence you have to believe it's true. Well, she simply replied by saying, see my original comment, which I take it to be progressive Christians don't all agree, so it's not worth talking to them. So I replied, well, you wouldn't be talking to progressive Christians as a group. You'd be talking to me. The topic would be your endorsement of Childers' thesis and my specific arguments that it is false. And you are free to choose the format. It could be a formal debate. It could be an informal, friendly, ironic conversation, whatever you like. She then replied, why should a whole discussion be centered upon your beliefs? Nobody is discussing what Randall Rouser believes. Neither is progressive Christianity what RR believes. It's about what progressive Christian leaders as a whole seem to be teaching to all their congregations. The first thing I want to highlight here, I find this to be honestly a quite condescending and off-putting statement that my individual beliefs are irrelevant and not of interest. But further to the point, the topic is not what progressive Christians believe as such. The primary topic is the claim that progressive Christianity as a group, a very diverse group, constitutes an entirely different religion. That's a specific claim that can be subjected to analysis and evidence. It's not about me. It's about Ms. Ferrer's promotion of a false and harmful claim about a very large and diverse group of people. And then she goes on and says, it's about what the progressive Christian leaders as a whole seem to be teaching to all their congregations. So, okay, let's talk about that. What are they all teaching that you say is sufficient to qualify all of them as another religion? And how do you justify saying they're all another religion based upon the teaching of some select group of individual leaders? And how do you define or decide which leaders are the definitive ones to identify what every progressive Christian that is to be identified as such and thus to be part of another religion? How do you decide which ones qualify for that? So many questions I have, so many questions. So I'll leave it there. Apparently this is not going to go anywhere, and I'm disappointed. I was really hoping that Ms. Ferrer would be willing to have a conversation. I'm going to conclude with this. I'll just say this, that I just had a debate on the Atheist Edge channel with Richard Carrier, which is going to be coming out. It's just right now for patrons, but it'll be publicly available in a few weeks on biblical violence. It was a very enjoyable exchange. We disagreed about all sorts of things, but it was very friendly, and we had a very good substantive exchange. And the irony is, I found that an atheist like Richard Carrier to be much more welcoming of disagreement and conversation than many of these Christian apologists like Ferrer or Sean McDowell or Alisa Childers herself or Mike Winger or Frank Turek or Lee Strobel, all of these people that keep promoting this claim about all progressive Christians being another religion. It's false and it's harmful. And dissing me and saying that my opinion is irrelevant and who cares, and I don't talk to people that don't all have a unified position, those are just not meaningful and substantive ways to engage with others. So that's where we'll have to leave it, I guess.